Hi, y'all. Welcome back. Today we are going to talk about topic 3, day 2, and we are going to go back to your geometry days a little bit. We're going to talk about how to find the equations of circles and how to graph them. Okay. Most of this you all have already seen, so hopefully it's a quick little reminder. But there might be a little bit that you forget, so hopefully we'll refresh your memory. All right. So the first thing is at the top here you will see the equation of a circle. Okay. So every equation, every circle that you have, this is the general form of that circle. Okay, a couple of things. The x and y are just like a random point, x and y. So we're going to keep x and y in most of our answers. H and k are the center of the circle. So remember, h is basically like the x, k is the y, and r is the radius. Okay, notice that r is the radius, but in the equation it is r squared. All right, so keep that in mind. So the very first question says identify the center and the radius. All right, so if it's in the right form, it's pretty easy to pick out the center and the radius, right? This is in standard form. There just happens to not be any parentheses. So since there are no parentheses in this problem, notice there's no h, right? And there's no k. So there's still something there. We just didn't write it. So the center for this one would be 0, 0, right? Because there's no h in our problem and there's no k. The radius in this case, right? It wants us to find the radius too. So r squared is 16. Right, this 16 is in the same place as the r squared. So to figure out what r is, what the radius is, we would just square root both sides so that the square root and square cancel. And the square root of 16 is 4. So then if we wanted to graph this, we would put a point, a center at 0, 0, and then the radius is 4. So we just count out 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, put a point. We go up 4, put a point. Left 4, put a point. Down 4, put a point. And then we connect the dots. Don't judge my circle here. It's going to be kind of a hot mess. Ooh, that actually wasn't that bad. Kind of proud of myself there. Okay. So that's all we do is find the center, find the radius, and that's about it. Okay. We're going to skip down here to number 4. A little bit different. Okay. So this one's in standard form. This is the standard form of a circle. And we just want to pick out what the center is. Now, notice that in our equation, it's x minus h and y minus k. Okay, they are minus signs. But in this problem, they are plus signs. So the only way that that could have occurred is if this would have been a -3 and a -1. Because then it would have been minus -3 and minus -1. Right? So basically, whenever a number is in parentheses, right, like we've talked about before, you always do the opposite. So the center of this would be -3, -1. Okay, so whenever it's in parentheses, you always do the opposite of it. All right, the radius in this case, r squared is 9, so we would square root it. So r equals 3. So we have our center and our radius. So if we wanted to graph it, -3, -1, then you go down 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, left 1, 2, 3, up 1, 2, 3, and left 1, 2, 3. And then we connect the dots. And there's our equation of a circle. All right, and there's our graph of the circle. Okay? Everybody good? Easy peasy? Piece of cake? All right, the next one just wants us to identify the center and radius, which is basically what we just did, right? We just don't have to graph it in this case. Remember, h is always with the x, so this would be our h. This would be our k. Okay? But you always do the opposite when it's in parentheses. So in this case, the center of this, the center, the h and k would be +4, +16. All right, and then it also says find the radius, which again we just did on the last problem. So if r squared is 4, square root it, so r would just equal 2. So we found the center and we found the radius. Okay, not a whole lot to it in that case. All right. Now, sometimes you're going to get some ugly radii. It's not always going to be a whole number like this was 2, this one was 3. So it's not always going to come out nice and neat, which we'll see some examples of in just a little bit. Okay? All right. Let's look at another example. Now we are going to talk about, now we're going to write an equation, but now we're given the center and the radius. Okay, so now we've been given the information that we need. And we need to write an equation that looks like this. X minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. So again, we're just going to plug in what we know, right? Plug in all the information that we were given. So 6 would be h, k would be 12. our radius is r. So we just plug all of that in, and then we've got our answer. Okay, so it would be x minus h, and h is 6 squared, plus y minus k, and k is 12 squared, equals r squared is 7, so 7 squared. So my final answer, x minus 6 squared plus y minus 12 squared equals 49. And we're done, because 7 squared is 49. Questions, confused, lost, something doesn't make sense, please don't hesitate to ask me. All right, number 11. Now it's going to be translated. So we're going to move it left or right or up and down depending on what the problem says. Okay, so the easiest way to do this, the easiest thing that we want to do is find the center first. So find the center of this, all right, which is h and k, like I've said now like 5 times. So the center would be 2, negative 4, because we do the opposite. So positive 2, negative 4. This says translate 5 right and 3 down. So on a graph, if you have a point and you move it 5 to the right, that means we are actually adding 5 to the x values, right? Because if you go right, that's the x value. So we're actually going to be adding 5 to our x value, all right? If we go 3 down, that means we are subtracting 3 from what would normally be our y value, okay? So the plus 5 is right 5. The down 3 means minus 3. So our new center of our circle, if we move this around, 2 plus 5 is 7, negative 4 minus 3 is also 7, so negative 7. So this is the original circle, the center. This is the new center after I've moved it. So I had a circle, I moved it 5 right and 3 down. This would be my new center. All right, so my new equation is going to look really similar to this one, except instead of 2 and 4, I'm going to put 7 and negative 7. So x minus 7 squared plus y plus 7 squared equals, in r we didn't change, 49. Okay? So again, just add or subtract wherever you're moving that thing from. All right, just add or subtract wherever it's going. Okay. All right, the next one is the area. So now we're given the center and the area of a circle. Okay, there's a couple of things you'll want to know for this. One is the formula for a circle. So the area for the formula of a circle is pi r squared. You're also going to need to know for some of these problems the diameter of a circle. The diameter is 2 pi r. So you will need these two equations to help you solve this problem. Okay, so the one thing they didn't tell us in this problem is we don't know what r is, right? So we don't know what the radius is, so I can't write the equation of a circle yet until I know the radius. But I know the area, so I'm going to substitute this 9 pi in for area because that's what it is. So 9 pi equals pi r squared. And now I can figure out what r is. So first I have to get r by itself. So divide by pi. That way the pi's would cancel. So I get 9 equals r squared. Then square root it to get r by itself. So 3 equals r. And I'm done. Right? I have now figured out what r is, and I know the center. So now it is exactly like the first problems that we did. Right? I can take h and k and plug them into the formula for a circle. So x minus h, but h is already negative, so it would be plus 8 squared plus y. K is negative 15, so when I plug it in, it becomes positive 15, equals r squared. If r is 3 and I square it, r becomes 9. And we are finito. Questions? Confused? Lost? Something we don't get? Confused about? All right. Hopefully everything's good. I keep asking if you have questions for getting them on video. Don't judge. So 16. All right. Now we're going to jump over here to this one. So we got 2 problems left. It gave us the center, and then it gave us just a random point. So once again, we don't know r. right? I have no idea what r is yet, and I can't write the equation until I know r, all right? So we already know the center of a circle is h and k. It's basically like an x and a y, right? Same thing, I just made them different letters. And then we have this random point, x and y, okay? I need to figure out how far it is from the center to that other point, okay? So to do this, we're gonna have to go back to what you did a couple of sections ago. We have to find the distance from here to here, okay? So I need to use the distance formula to figure out what r is, okay? So if you remember what the distance formula was, x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. And I'm going to use these two as my x1, y1, x2, y2. It doesn't matter what you pick. You just need to be consistent with it, okay? So I'm going to call this x1, y1, and I'm going to call this x2, y2. Okay? Doesn't matter which one you pick. Just be consistent. So if I plug it all in, x2, I said it was 9, minus x1, which is 12, squared, plus y2 is 7, minus y1, which is 6, squared. And then we're going to solve this thing. Okay, so 9 minus 12 is negative 3 squared. 7 minus 6 is 1 squared. Negative 3 squared is 9. 1 squared is 1. So I end up with the square root of 10. That's my radius. That is the distance from the center to that point on the circle. So from the center out, that is what I get. Okay. So my r value is the square root of 10. Okay. So r is the square root of 10. So now I'm going to plug everything in. I know the center, so I know h and k. So x minus 9 squared plus y minus 7 squared. But remember, it equals r squared, right? Remember the original problem that we did, the very first thing is it equals r squared. If r is already the square root of 10, and then I squared it, so basically the square root of 10 squared, y'all can see that, okay? The square root and the square are going to cancel each other out. So I'm just left with that number 10. So my final answer, x minus 9 squared plus y minus 7 squared equals 10. And we have written the equation of a circle. So we started with just the center and a point, right? I had to use the distance formula to get that radius. Once I got the radius, I just plugged them in. Golden, 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 golden. All right, the last one. This is the hardest one. So now we're going to do ends of a diameter. So now I haven't given you the center and I haven't given you the radius. We're going to have to find all of that, okay? So I need to figure out what the center is first. So we're going to ignore, I'm going to cross this one off so I don't confuse you. We're going to find the center first, okay? For us to find the center, I know it's h and k, okay? And they gave me the points of a diameter. So if you think back to your geometry days, the diameter runs right through the center, right? In order for something to be a diameter, it has to go through the middle. So the middle is the key word there. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to find the midpoint of this diameter, okay, which we did back at the end of topic 2. So to find the midpoint of this thing, okay? And if you remember, the formula for midpoint is you add the x's. So this is x1, y1, x2, y2. You add the x's together. So 4 minus 6 divided by 2. Add the y's together. Negative 3 plus 3 divided by 2. So you add the x's and divide by 2. You add the y's and divide by 2. So that would give me a center, a midpoint of negative 1 and 0. That is my center. Okay, so I now know what h and k are. It's negative 1 and 0. Because the middle of a diameter has to be the center of the circle. Okay, Now, the one thing I still don't know is the radius. So now, to find the radius, I have to do exactly what I did up here, right? Because I need the distance from the center to the radius. All right, so from the center to the circle, that'll give me the distance of the radius. All right, so I'm going to do exactly what I did up here. All right, but I'm going to use the center and then one of these points. Doesn't matter which one you use. I'm going to use the first one. So x1 and y1. Okay, so if I did that, I would have the square root. X2 in my problem is the center, so -1 plus 4 squared plus y2 is 3 minus 0 squared. Everybody good? So now we're going to solve this. -1 plus 4 is 3. So 3 squared plus another 3 squared would give me 9 and 9, so square root of 18. So that is my radius. That's r, the square root of 18. Okay? Now I'm just going to keep it as square root of 18 for right now. We could simplify it, but we're not really going to worry about that. Okay? So now I know my center and I know the radius. I just plug it in. So my final answer, x minus h, which was -1, so it becomes +1 squared, plus y minus, you can put the -0. You don't have to have the -0. You can just have y squared, right? If you want the -0, that's great. Just like up here, r was the square root of 10. So when I squared it, it became just 10. The same thing's going to happen right here. The square root of 18, when I square it, would just become 18. And that is my final answer. Okay? Those are our notes for today on equations of circles. If something didn't make sense, or you have a question, or you would just like to chat, please let me know, and I will be happy to go over it some more. Thank y'all.